learning to act without thinking is
Got
that
it.
instinct.
Okay,
You know?
that makes
but
sense.
you are yourself.
You are
in
yourself,
that
but
moment.
it's helping people be more emotionally vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think this method is really good for a lot of people who are very logical. It's the only acting method that I've ever discovered that worked for me because I needed to learn how to be impulsive because I'm not in real life. And that's so a lot of people will be very stoic and they get up there and then they start and
That's part of the process.
Yeah.
You're giving and receiving. You're giving and receiving. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
especially
beautiful.
if you can't do it when you're saying something you wrote that happened to you, then you are not going to be able to do it when it's
not yours.
When you have to, and it's
not
somebody
your
else's
story.
words.
Right. Welcome to the Storycraft Podcast for Storytellers. I'm your host, Meg Adams, and I'm here to help you explore how stories shape our connections. Wondering how stories help you network and advance? Looking to bridge online and face-to-face worlds, foster understanding, and ignite innovation? Look no further. Whether you're a leader, communicator, educator, or just love a good story, join us for actionable insights and real talk with professional storytellers, all aimed at helping you build stronger, better connections. So, Shaina, if you could tell us about your acting career and how storytelling has played a part in that career.
Yeah, storytelling is the career.
Right.
I'm an actor. I do a lot of musical theater. I've done a little bit of TV and film, but theater is my main thing, I guess. And storytelling is what it's all about. For my end, it's more about character creation, and even if it's a well-established character, like I just did Daisy in The Great Gatsby, and that's everyone knows Daisy. Or a character that it's from a brand new show or play that no one's ever heard of, and you have to find that character and tell the story through that character's eyes.
How long have you been doing this? Like, I've known you for a while, but
professionally, I would say since my first paid acting job was probably in college.
Okay.
So, math. So in 2005-ish, I think, I want to say, 2005. So, math.
Yeah.
So since 2005 professionally, but since I was a kid.
Right? And I'm
probably
curious to know, like, how that's decades of playing roles, playing characters, getting into a character role. What are some strategies that you use to kind of take yourself out of your own perspective and into the perspective of a character?
Yeah, it's changed over the years a lot. I've learned a lot over the years because I am a singer too, and I feel like a lot of my earlier professional stuff was very technical singing based, so I wasn't as strategic about the character stuff, which maybe wasn't so good. But now that is my favorite thing to do, honestly. So what I do now is I'll read the play or the musical, and I'll think about. I'll just read it with no judgments, and then what I like to do is I like to find myself in the character, because if I'm trying to be something else, or if I'm trying to be what I think the character should be, then it does come off as false, and I think audiences can tell that it's fake and it's not. There's just something artificial about it. So I like to find different parts of the character in myself and even think back to my past, like, well, when's a time when I acted like this, or did what this character did, or even on any level, and then I go from there and I start to feel like, oh, I did that because of this, and when I think of what that was, it helps me get into that moment or whatever it is with the character.
That makes total sense. But as an actress, you're doing that as your job, all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, does this ever happen for you in real life where maybe you meet someone and you're like, I don't understand you, but, I know I'm putting words in your mouth, but I'm curious to know, does that ever happen? Do you ever take that technique in real life? Do you see that?
Oh, that's funny. I meet people I don't understand all the time.
Don't we all?
Yes. It really does help you to be more empathetic to other people a lot, but you have to want that, I guess, too. You have to consciously think, why can't I understand you? Why can't I, let me try to, and then that I'll definitely use those techniques to understand this other person.
Yeah, and so do you think the audience, when you're on stage, like you've researched, you've practiced, you are this persona that is a little piece of you, which I think is a really beautiful sentiment, Shaina.
Yeah.
How do you then translate that for the audience? Like, what is that? I've always wondered and been super curious about what that's like, to be on stage and to feel like the energy that can be in a theater sometimes.
Yeah, it does. It isn't easy, that's for sure, because you can rehearse, and like rehearsals are honestly the best part, because you're not thinking about the audience, you're just in the character, in the moment, with the other people, letting them affect you, and then an audience gets there, and all of a sudden you're very aware of it, and you're trying really hard not to be, but because of this awareness, your character is like, it's getting messed up. So it really just takes practice. It takes doing it a lot. I'm in a regular acting class, or I'm in front of my classmates. You just have to do it enough that you stop noticing it, or you just get used to being aware of it and just letting that exist, but not affect the acting,
the performance.
And what you're doing.
Yeah. How have you? Being an actress sounds terrifying to me. Like, as you say that, I'm like, it sounds really fun, but on the other aspect, it sounds terrifying because it feels like, and I know this has been the criticism sometimes of acting, that like you can go too far into a role, or you can maybe get a little too into it. Does that ever happen to you?
In a sense, it does. I don't think other people would know, but where it hits me always, where I'm like, okay, I did my job too well, is when the show's over, and I go home and I just feel crazy, and I feel lost, and I feel, or like I miss the people in the show like a little too much. And there's like these relationships that you formed like on stage that suddenly are gone, and you've invested all this emotional energy into whatever it is, and then it just like, it's done. And that's supposed to be suddenly like so normal because the show's over, of course.
Right.
But it always takes a couple days, and then I go home and I'm like, oh man, I'm depressed.
I mean, I never thought of it, but man, you have these, they are, I guess, artificial, but they're real people that you're
real
acting.
Feelings, but it's an imaginary scenario.
Right. So again, I'm also curious for our listeners who are maybe professional storytellers, not actors or actresses, like what piece of advice would you give them about storytelling to build relationships, like we're talking about, in better ways, like more productive ways? Yeah,
I mean, I think just honesty. You don't have to create anything more than what is true inside of you and what actually exists within you. There's a beautiful truth in simplicity too. You don't have to like create this big thing because you think it's going to draw people in. Just be honest, tell your story, or whatever it is that you want to convey. Connect with the other person themselves too. I think that's important, because the way that you're relating to another person is going to affect the way you tell the story,
right?
Whatever it is that you're saying. So I just think honesty and truth is best, even if it's simple, even if you think it's boring, or it never is. It's a true human story. Yeah. It's not going to be boring.
No. Like, if we're thinking that like these stories are these honest representations of ourselves, but they're also a way for us to connect to other human beings, like you said earlier, I can see myself in you. I can find a piece of myself in you. But I think a lot of people will hold back from sharing stories publicly or even face-to-face over a cup of coffee because they think their stories aren't worthy of being told, or maybe they're just boring. So I'd be curious, what's your advice, if you've experienced that, and two, what's your advice to kind of live into your story a bit?
Yeah. I mean, you have to want to tell it. If you really want that connection, I also think it's practice. You have to practice telling it. Maybe put it on film but don't show anybody, just so that you're used to saying the words, I think that storytelling is, if you feel misunderstood, or if you feel like no one might listen to what you have to say or think in general, if you put it within a story so that they're seeing it through a character, you are the character,
right.
Then they're gonna get it better. They're gonna see it through the eyes of the character and not feel like they're being talked at or preached to or sold something, or so just again, the honesty, and maybe practice it. Maybe just practice speaking and I do this for acting.
It's a great piece of advice.
Even though I am an actor, I still have to practice speaking.
Right. Yeah.
And honestly, like one-on-one like this is harder for me than if I have a memorized script. Yeah. This is like, I feel, nervous and jumbly with my words.
No,
but it really helps just to practice speaking, whatever it is you're going to say. Just having even the muscle memory of certain phrases in your story.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice. Love what you're hearing on this podcast? Consider booking me to speak at your next event. Dive further into the transformative power of storytelling with my keynote. Tell better stories, speak up, stand out, and build community. In a world that often amplifies our differences, my talk invites you to embrace genuine connections. Break free from the echo chambers and discover the art of storytelling. Learn how to share your own narrative, listen actively, and foster communities that flourish on shared experiences. Check out the show notes to learn more about how to book a talk for your next event. I love that you said, like, if you feel misunderstood, if you feel frustrated, like, a way is to practice your story and then tell it. That's a great piece of advice. I never thought of that. But as an actress, like, you can think of the turn of words, right? You can think of, I have had people say too, like, oh, try it out on a friend and watch their body language. Like, watch how they respond to your story. Like, did you lose eye contact 30 seconds in? You got to get to your point quicker. Like,
Yep.
So that's a great piece of advice. And then, a lot of what I'm interested in is figuring out how we can use storytelling to cross difference. And I'll be honest, like, I struggled with that through, like, 2020 especially, like, where I was like, I'm a rhetorician that studies storytelling and I'm really mad at people. So I was curious if you have experienced that. So, like, speaking across silos, across difference, like, if you have any advice just personally as, someone who, like you said, is probably prone to be a little more empathetic than other people just because you've played these characters and you're used to switching roles. Do you have advice for people who are having these difficult conversations across difference?
Yeah, I mean, this is something I learned too, because again, the pandemic was crazy and we had nothing better to do but then to stare at our phones and get mad about everything. Yeah. And I fell very hard into that world. But listening, I mean, really, I feel like you have to know the other side and you have to listen to them. And that's a big thing in acting too, is listening. You're not just telling your story. You're letting the other person affect you in the telling of that story. And so it might be different every time you say it or do it. You really just have to know, and you have to respect the other side, I guess, or whoever you're trying to reach. I think. I hope I answered that.
You did. Right. I'm just curious.
I hope I understood what you meant.
Yeah. How do you do that? Like, do you have any tricks for listening? Like, I don't know if you have any stories or any, like, personal experiences you could share where maybe that was, like, a little difficult, but you were able to overcome it. Did you lean on anything? Because, like I said, you're an actress. You do this.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it depends how sensitive the subject is. I'm not really sure, what exactly we're talking about specifically. If it's, like, a really sensitive topic, I might not even dip my toes into it, because I don't want to fight, and I don't want. It depends what it is.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah. Like, if you're, we could.
I tend to be more
scenario
of a
would be, same
in real life.
Yeah, like, we'll say it's like you're struggling to understand. If we're put in the scenario where, like, you're struggling to understand somebody's perspective, but you really want to, but maybe it's, like, very difficult. What are some pieces of advice? Listening is a great one, but, like, do you have any other advice from, like, your character studies or your time as an actress that people can use, like, in the moment?
Yeah.
Okay, like, I want to understand, but I'm having trouble.
Right. Well, honestly, it's as simple as putting yourself in their shoes, and that I know that's just a simple thing that everyone says.
Simple, not easy.
Yeah, no, it's not. I always, I don't know. I don't find it. Sometimes I'm afraid I go too far. You know when you're talking to somebody and they're having a problem and you're like, oh yeah, I get you. There was this time when and then you're like nervous because you're like, oh, now I made it about me. And then, so I feel like I kind of do that naturally. I will always try to see why they're reacting in a certain way, like, and then I'll share how I also did that at some point.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if that I have any advice into doing it. Just maybe be aware that you want to do it and really think about it when they're talking to you, you know, like practice it, you know, watch TV and say,
I love that.
hey, if I were Rachel on Friends, you know, why would I react this way?
Yeah.
Or, you know,
Yeah.
when's the time when I did this?
I love that. I think that's simple, but it's also like, I don't think people, I think you're selling yourself short because you probably very naturally do this because of your career choice. Like you're always, like you said, I'm trying to figure out where this person is coming from.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's always most people's first reaction to having those conversations.
True. That's true. And for example, Daisy in The Great Gatsby, I never liked The Great Gatsby. I never liked Daisy.
I mean, Daisy was kind of a jerk.
She's terrible.
Yeah.
So I was cast by someone who trusted me, and they were like, no, I see this role in you. You can do it. And I didn't agree at all. So I was like, I'm going to work really hard. I'm going to do this. I want to do it the right way. I'm not just going to like throw it away and, you know. So I really did work, and I did find it, and it was really fun. And now I love The Great Gatsby.
Really?
I love this story.
Okay.
I think I was too young.
Yeah.
When I
Do you
read it the
think
first
your
time.
process? Okay, so you were too young. Were you able to have compassion for Daisy? I'm just curious
not
because she's a hard.
necessarily, but I couldn't think of it like that.
Sure.
I couldn't think like, oh, you know, I had to think of it. I had to go, like I said, go back into my own past and try to find relatable moments, like when, I mean, not murder, obviously, but you know, some of the like leading
kind
up
of
to
like
that,
a snobby. Sure.
Yeah. And so you find the moments when like, for example, just like the smallest thing, like when did I want attention from men, and what did I do, and like why did I want it, and like you really think about it. And I'll even go back to like old journals and be like, okay, like what was I thinking, what was I doing? And then you find these moments and you're like, oh man, I am way more like Daisy than I thought. I hate this. But I am. You know, and I had to like research my life.
Right. It's like character
hers.
study.
But
see, I think it's so interesting as an actress, like you're professionally doing that, right? You're going back, you're professionally
crazy,
trying.
yes.
It is crazy when you, and then those, like you said, and then those relationships are over. And you're like, what happened? But it's also like, I can't imagine the way that you walk through the world then, like knowing that that's the way you're probably constantly trying, I would imagine, trying to find that in someone else. Like,
there is compartmentalizing. There is actor Shaina and like real world Shaina, because if I acted like actor Shaina in the real world, I would be a nightmare, because I would act on every impulse, and I would be way too honest, and I would be probably angry all the time, and you know,
too many emotions.
Because we're trained to react without thought. Where in life you have to think first. You have to.
Can you talk a little bit more about that training? That's interesting.
It's I don't know if that's all the schools of acting, but the one that I particularly study, which is the Meisner method, that is kind of the basis of that. And there's there are actual exercises that you do in class to get you to act before thought. So we practice it. It's just
so that's why you do
emotion.
like the deep character studies, so that you're so into that character, you're acting without.
And then you kind of have this this practice, this muscle truly of reacting without thought. And if you've done the homework of the character, then you do it through them.
Oh wow, I didn't that. Yeah, that is a lot. So real world Shaina doesn't do that though.
No.
She's like, you're logically thinking things through before you. And
I'm a very logical person.
How do you do that? Like, how do you turn that off?
The logical, normal Shaina me is very easy and is like the base. It's the acting that's hard. So I have to train. I have to practice.
That's really interesting.
It is.
It's fascinating really to me when you think about it. And that's why I was so interested to talk to you as a storyteller. Because I feel like, again, your profession is like the true storytelling. Like you're on a stage, you're embodying a character. The rest of us, like I said, I was a journalist, so I'm just telling other people's stories, right? I'm engaged with them, but only for a very short amount of time. Like it's quick, it's over and done with. So I was interested in talking about what it's like immersing yourself in those stories.
It can be pretty magical.
When
it works.
Tell me about that. Tell me about that feeling and that magic.
You kind of don't realize it till it's over. And then you're just like, because you just lived this crazy thing that you know wasn't real, but you still feel all the real feelings, you know? And it's great. It's so magical.
Why did you choose? I mean, you're answering this question, but like, it's magical, but it's also competitive, right? To be I feel like it's one of those like, it's like my son says he wants to be a firefighter, but I'm like, you know, it's like, but every kid says they want to be a singer, but you did it. You did it. And so can you tell me like, what gave you, like, why did you pursue it as a career?
I kind of felt like I couldn't, not that I wasn't able to do anything else, but I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I didn't at least try.
Yeah.
And I never set, this is maybe bad advice, but I never set huge goals for myself.
I love that advice,
We're just going to see what happens. Let's just do this. We're going to move to New York. Yeah. And like, I was an education major, music education in college, and I knew I didn't want to teach. So I didn't really have a lot of, I wasn't like a big fish in a small pond in college because I wasn't even really doing it. I was doing it outside of school, but I wasn't like a theater major.
It wasn't, okay, I never knew that. I just assumed that you were.
No, I was for my first year.
Okay.
And then I switched, which maybe was the wrong choice, but whatever.
Here we are.
Here we are years later.
Yeah.
So when I moved to New York, I was just like, we'll just see what happens, and it went well, and it has its ups and downs. I mean, there are times when I don't work in the industry for years at a time, like maybe some smaller things, but not like a show or a play. But it still hasn't yet driven me away or made me want to get like a real full-time job. And then the pandemic happened, and I thought, this is it. And then the pandemic ended. It's
Sure, we're still here.
Yeah, we're still here, but I booked a bunch of things all of a sudden, and so it was like, okay, well, maybe we are doing this.
Yeah.
And so it's like I think about doing something more steady all the time, but I never do it. I never get there.
I love that. Okay, how do you do this? This is a selfish question.
Not at all.
How do you do this? Is it the magic that just keeps drawing you, that you're like, I'm just gonna see what happens? Like, what is it that keeps you going, that doesn't pull you out to something more stable?
I mean, I have a lot of support. I have a lot of people that are going through the same thing, and we all do the same stuff, and we all have the same side jobs. We're working in restaurants, we're catering, we're, doing tours of like music thing, like all the little things that actors do. So I don't feel like what I'm doing is crazy or weird. It feels, it does, there is a stability in it because I'm used to it. But I have to hate it. I have to really hate the lifestyle enough to leave, and I don't yet.
I love that. I love that when you talked about it, your face lit up. Like, you were like, it's magical. It's still magical. Yeah, that's so neat.
And honestly, aging is the best, because the roles available for like women in their 30s and 40s are so much better, And so I'm so ready for 40. I'm so ready, because there's all these roles.
I love that
I can't wait to play. So
I love it. Oh,
I can't quit now.
That's amazing. So it's like, so that you're saying that, like, a lot of people would say, oh, your career's over. Like, so you're
not
like,
for actors.
No, that's amazing.
Maybe dancers, because biology is terrible, but biology sucks, but not for actors.
No. I want to go back to what you said about not setting a goal. Like, coming to New York City, you didn't have expectations, or like, how did you make that work?
I had some things I wanted, but they weren't huge. It wasn't like, I'm moving to New York and I'm going to be on Broadway.
Yeah.
I think I made a list when I moved, and I was like, I would love to work on a cruise ship or work for Disney, and then I did.
Yeah.
So it was like a reasonable goal.
Yeah.
And then so like I just keep moving my goals. Yeah.
Yeah. But you're not like, you seem so, of the people that I talk to, you just seem so well adjusted. You're like, well, it's like, if it happens, like
I think that's why, I don't know. I think that's why I've stuck around for so long, though, honestly.
And you're getting to the good part.
Yeah, I'm not, I don't know, I'm not, because I am logical, and I know, I'd like to think that I know myself, and I know where I stand. And I think sometimes, I don't see myself as big as I should. I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes total sense.
I can't think of the words, but
you're not.
I do make myself smaller,
very big,
but it should be bigger, maybe sometimes, to help with the career. But I think that's why I've stuck around, is because I feel like I would know, like, you know what, I can't compete anymore. Like, I'm just not, and I don't think that often.
Yeah.
And it might sound terrible, but I'll go see shows and I'm like, oh, like, I can do that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's
like,
just,
I can still be here.
There's so many people.
Yeah.
There's so many people here, and it's who you know, and it's having the right agents, and like, it's all these things, and I would say 80% are out of your control. So if I have the part that I can control in line, then I just need to keep trying with the stuff that I can't.
Yeah.
Like playing the lottery, Yeah. weird, but
you said this too when we first started talking about how a lot, or I don't know if we were off camera, but like a lot of it is about who you know. So have you used any storytelling in your referral, like how has that worked for you in the New York City, like you're an actress in New York City, like how do you build that network? How did you do it?
Yeah, that's the hardest part for me. I'm not good at like promoting myself.
Sure.
But I think just from having been here for so long and meeting, I'm so much better once I'm like one-on-one with someone and meeting them and like actually sharing. You know, if I'm in like an agent meeting or something and I have to like talk about myself, I'll force myself to do it, but it's never what I feel comfortable with.
Sure.
As opposed to if I'm in a workshop setting and I'm learning from somebody and then we sit down and we chat, that is much easier for me because there's no pressure of like, you know, something that I'm asking for or needing.
Yeah.
So I think most of the connections that I've made here is just because I've been here, you know, and I've stuck it out.
You've been a part of the community.
People. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How important has the theater community been to you in your personal and professional life?
Oh, it's everything. I mean, it's everything. It's the reason I moved here because I met people in Ohio who were like, we're moving to New York. Do you want to move with us? And I was like, yes, I do.
That's awesome.
Just to, you know, getting through all the rejections because we're all doing it together and it doesn't seem abnormal. It doesn't seem as personal because we're all dealing with wins and losses. You know, in even just like nichier stuff, you know, you find like there's within the theater community, you find like the smaller little group of friends that like the smaller nerdier things that you do. And so, you know, you're all theater people, but you also like science fiction, you know, and so every friend I have here is from the theater community.
Do you know their stories? I imagine like these are friends for decades or new friends. Like how do you, what's your advice to people who may be a little more like afraid to put themselves out there? Like maybe they have a hobby or they're not a professional storyteller, but they want to do that on the side. Like how do they find their people?
You know, I've always found my people doing shows.
Yeah.
So,
go do the thing.
Go do the thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. And start there. Start with what you all have in common, you know, and then see what happens, I guess. You can't force it.
No.
You know, you can't force a friendship.
Yeah. But I mean, I think for a lot of people too, like New York City is intimidating. Like it's intimidating to be here and to come and not know people. You came with people that you knew, but like, how did you build that? How did you start out building that community? Was it just through the shows? I know you said you go to acting school, like any.
Yeah, all of the above.
Yeah.
You know, people I worked with either in a restaurant or did a show with, or I mean, just the things I was doing in daily life, taking workshops and classes. Yeah, that's the thing about New York is like people are intimidated by it. Yeah. Which is so funny to me because there's everything here. It's not like one big thing.
Yeah.
It's like a million little things together.
I love that.
So if you find your thing, it's gonna exist here. You know, you can't move to New York City and think that there's not gonna be a group of people for you. They're here. They're here.
Yeah.
They're definitely here. Anything you can think of.
That's beautiful. Do you think that like community, I just hearing you say that, I'm like, oh man, community kind of operates in that same way. Like you find the people that you can connect to over whatever it is, and then you just build it out. Okay, we had to pause the podcast to let you in on this opportunity. If you're ready to elevate your brand storytelling, don't miss our training, Tell Better Stories, led by me, a seasoned television journalist and PR professor, and Kyle, an on-air meteorologist and video storytelling expert. This workshop unveils our secrets to craft compelling, personal-driven narratives that resonate with your audience. Learn our distinct approach that puts people first and brands second, leveraging 6 storytelling elements for maximum impact. Walk away with actionable strategies, tactics, and a clear process to replicate success in any organization. Check out the show notes to learn more about this offer or reach out to homeplacecreative@gmail.com. How are you vulnerable with people? I know that's an interesting piece. We've talked to people about like how do you trust people enough to be vulnerable with them with your story, sometimes deeper parts of your story.
I think that's also, you have to practice it.
That's a good piece. I've never heard anyone say that, but that's a great piece of advice.
One of the first things that a new student will do in my acting studio is they will literally write a story about that's true, a true thing, and it's not supposed to be like the worst thing that's ever happened to you, but something that you wouldn't just tell anybody. That's hard to say because the point is to draw emotion out of you,
right?
And then that person comes back a week later and has to say say these words that they wrote to somebody else. They get to pick somebody in the class, usually someone they don't know. And then they do it 3 times in each of the consecutive classes, and it's like the biggest thing because you're being that's almost the most vulnerable that you will be in the class,
and it's like speed dating, right?
You.
Like you don't know the person you're telling your story to. Yeah.
Yep.
How was it being on the giving end of that and the receiving end?
Oh, it's always so scary on the receiving end, I think, because
I would think so too.
Because you've done it and you know what's going to happen probably, and then you have to be responsible for that, and you have to, but you also have to be truthful. That's part of your training as well, is being on the receiving end. And like, if you hate what they said, you have to be truthful, and you just have to be mad about it, and then you do some of the exercise, and usually that doesn't happen, but you have to either comfort them or like you're going to be hit with a lot of emotion.
Is this acting, Shaina, that responds to them?
Or it's bringing yourself into. So it's not a character. You are yourself.
You are yourself because you're telling your story, but you're also receiving it as yourself.
Yes, as yourself.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's part of the training of learning to act without thinking. Is that instinct? Okay.
That makes sense.
But you are yourself.
You are yourself. But it's helping people be more emotionally vulnerable. Sounds like.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think this method is really good for a lot of people who are very logical. It's the only acting method that I've ever discovered that worked for me, because I needed to learn how to be impulsive because I'm not in real life. And so a lot of people will be very stoic and they get up there and then they start, and
it's part of the process.
Yeah,
you're giving and receiving. You're giving and receiving. Yeah, that's
especially if you can't do it when you're saying something you wrote that happened to you, then you are not going to be able to do it when it's
not yours.
When you have to, and it's
not
somebody
your
else's
story.
Words.
Right. Yeah. What a great piece of advice, though. Yeah, but also like for people who have a hard time, because part of the storytelling process is that emotional vulnerability. Like I said, there's those issues with who you're trusting with that story and those consequences. But I think a lot of people, Brene Brown says, armor up. They're not even going to get vulnerable because they don't know how to do it. And that seems like that could be a really neat, like, cool way to, hey, can I practice with you? Or like,
and even like our acting class, or just there's Sanford Meisner is the name of the man that invented the method.
Okay,
They're everywhere.
Yeah.
And I know my class and probably every other class in the world is open to non-actors. A lot of non-actors take this class. Even improv. Improv is so good for that kind of thing because it just gets you in the moment.
Right.
I've taken a bunch of improv classes with every other occupation other than acting. I feel like it's mostly non-actors.
I have thought about doing improv for so long, but it terrifies me for that reason, because I'm not prepared. Like I can't prepare, and I have to be like, I can public speak or I can talk in front of a camera, but I'm prepared.
Yes, right. And the same for me. I am not good at speaking like extemporaneously. I need a script. But what I will say, what improv has helped me do, and it doesn't necessarily make me a better in the moment speaker, but it makes me super comfortable with failing. Because like I'm terrible, but then you just get used to it. You just have to do it. So then you're just like, well, then you. But
you're with everybody else who's doing it too, right?
And then when you don't care, then you are better. And even like for auditions, for me, going into an audition room after being in improv class all day, for example, I just don't care. Like what could happen?
Right.
That was just worse than me not being funny and me like not,
Oh yeah, I love that advice, because I think that holds so many. If you think about how that would kind of reciprocate throughout your life or trickle down to all these other things that we have these irrational fears of, or I think when we take it back to storytelling, people always say like, you're the hero of your own story, but nobody else is paying attention.
Yeah, exactly.
We get in our own heads, and it's just human nature. But like, you live your best life or your most authentic life when you quit caring about that to some extent.
I mean, I really related to what you said about that, when you just have to practice. I mean, I was a television meteorologist for 10 years, and it took me 2 years to just. I did it so much. And I was just like, oh, no,
it's like rip the Band-Aid off every day. And you're like, oh, I screwed up yesterday. Oh, I guess I'll keep going today.
I gotta do it again.
Everybody was mad at me yesterday.
So that's
like even emotions have muscle memory, you know?
I know,
and something else that I do when I'm like practicing a script is a lot of times people will tell you, like, save the emotion, like, save it for the stage, like, don't get it all out at once. If I don't do full emotion, like, every time I'm in rehearsal, I can't, like, save it for the show. I have to do it every time.
Yeah, it's muscle memory.
Because it really is emotional muscle memory, which is who knew, right?
It makes total
sense.
sense.
So strange.
Though,
and no one even told me that. That's something I discovered. So maybe it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
But for me, I have to just do it full out every time, and it you know, it gets older. It doesn't get old as fast if I have to continue to do it like a whole run of a show.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
We'll do rapid fire questions.
Oh,
There's only
shoot.
3. These ones are fun. This
is like an improv game.
See, you're ready. You're ready.
Go.
Okay. So your favorite story of all time? Movie, book, musical, like anything.
Honestly, the first thing that comes to mind is the his Dark Materials trilogy, which is the Golden Compass and the Subtle Knife and the Amber Spyglass.
Okay, yeah, I haven't read those.
Yeah, those are my favorite. I read them the first 2 in 8th grade, and then I had to wait for the 3rd book to come out. So in high school, I read the 3rd book, and that story gets me.
What is it about the story that gets you, Shaina?
It is a lot. It's an epic tale. So it starts small, and it's like, oh, this is a cute little fantasy, and then it gets like it gets philosophical and kind of like theological, and it gets very grand, and it ends beautifully.
Oh, I love a good ending. That's like the saddest thing when it doesn't end properly as stories. I'll like make up endings for the characters in my head because I can't stand it. You know, if that happens.
I'll throw a book if I hate the ending.
I'm like,
me so
this
mad.
didn't happen to them.
Yeah.
This is what happened to them in my mind, like the fan fiction.
Yeah. So it's like it sucks you in. It makes you love all the characters in this cute little first book, and then they just like explode it and make it into this like just huge epic.
So the second does like all the action happen in the second book? Ish.
It's all different kinds of action. Like the first book is very fantasy. Like there's talking animals and there's an adventure. But then the second book gets like almost a little more sci-fi and a little more paranormal. I don't want to say paranormal, but
there's lots of other things happening.
Yeah,
the adventure is taking off.
The world like expands essentially.
Cool. Oh,
and
nice. Okay, I'm definitely gonna check that out.
Yeah, and it's very emotional too, like the way the characters are written and the way they love each other, and it's beautiful.
That's awesome. Okay, second question is, what's the best piece of storytelling advice that you just have to tell us, or the worst piece that you have to warn us never to take?
I think best piece is just you have to just be honest. You have to be honest, and you have to be vulnerable. And if you're not good at it, you can practice.
Practice the Shaina method.
Just practice.
Go to an improv class.
Yeah, go to an improv class. Take an acting class.
I love that. And then the last question is, how do you define storytelling in your words?
I don't mean to sound too simple, but it is the sharing and telling of a story.
Yeah.
And it could be anything. It could be something small. It could be a grand adventure, like his Dark Materials, or just like something teeny weeny, like this is the way I feel, and here's why.
Yeah, I love that. We're so glad you've listened to this podcast episode. If you liked it, would you mind doing us a favor? Share this episode with someone who would be interested in the topic too. We're on a mission to help everyone become a better storyteller. And don't forget to subscribe to the show to get updated every time we release a new episode. Each and every episode is produced, hosted, and edited by us, Meg and Kyle Adams at Home Place Creative. Happy storytelling.